Tonight on Provincewide, this kitchen-bound husband has hit a nerve.
As we progressed in our marriage, it became evident that she really didn't cook.
He's produced a special guide for all those husbands out there whose wives don't cook. Good evening and welcome to Provincewide. I'm Diane Vernile. It's Mother's Day and many of you may be giving your mom a break from the kitchen duty. In fact, with the majority of adult women now working full-time, there's been a dramatic shift with who's on duty in the kitchen. A Burlington man who once worked in the trucking industry is taking advantage of this growing trend. He's out to help men who are faced with this domestic shakeup. Chris Hamilton has a nice treat for his wife on Mother's Day. He's making dinner. In fact, Chris has done most of the cooking in the past 22 years of marriage.
As we progressed in our marriage, it became evident that she really didn't cook and that I was the one that had the talent for cooking and the desire to cook, and she was just fine with that.
Wife Nancy says cooking just isn't her thing.
I don't want to, I don't like to, and it tastes better when he makes it.
Keeping in mind now that your wife is sitting right over there, I'm going to ask you, how bad a cook is she?
She's learned a lot.
From you?
Yes, she's learned an awful lot over the years. Actually, she's not a bad cook.
And this is the result of Chris's years spent in the kitchen. He's written The Cookbook for Men Whose Wives Don't Cook, a humorous guide for what he calls culinary challenged guys. Even though many women work these days, you'll often hear them complaining that they get stuck doing most of the cooking.
But do you think that women should have to know how to cook?
Absolutely not. The title came from sitting around work, talking with my friends at work who also were swapping recipes. You know, I cooked this lasagna, oh, I did this with it, I did that, and I'd bring sample stuff. You know, I'd make a beef stew and bring it into work.
So it was the guys at work who urged Chris to put his know-how and many culinary secrets in an easy-to-follow guide. And he says some men do need extra help in the kitchen.
And it's written in a language men can understand, as if I'm standing there in the kitchen, smacking you upside the head, you know, telling you do this and don't do that.
Chris has learned from trial and error. He admits he's had a few disasters himself in the kitchen.
I think the biggest disaster I've had is probably dropping something on the floor after I'd finished spending, you know, an hour making it, and then you just cry.
And the biggest mistake men make when trying to cook?
Not paying enough attention. My father, who is a man who doesn't cook, he just doesn't cook. When he barbecued steaks, he'd turn the barbecue on, throw the steaks on, and after about the third or fourth section of the newspaper, he'd then turn them over, or if he even remembered they were there, and they'd always come back like blackened leather. Sorry, Dad. Tenderloin
on the menu today, stuffed pork tenderloin.
It may sound complicated, but it really isn't. It takes about a half an hour completely to prepare.
Chris has stuffing for the inside.
I just bought a box of stuffing. It doesn't matter what kind of stuffing, stovetop, Uncle Ben's, turkey flavor, chicken flavor, herb flavor.
Yes, he said box. One of Chris's trade secrets is using convenient ready-made foods.
We're just going to roll it, just like a little jelly roll.
The roast now goes into the pan, and to make life easier for himself, he's cooking the veggies right alongside.
So we're going to add some green beans. I cut them and put them in some cold water.
Chris adds some baby potatoes and then glazes the pork.
I'm just going to add a little bit of applesauce on the top of this.
After adding the glaze and seasoning the veggies, the roast goes into the oven for an hour at medium heat. And an hour later, comes out
very much like this.
Looks great. Here's another one of his tricks to impress his wife.
The nice bowl, okay? This is what you do. You get into your cupboards, you go to those boxes that you got for your wedding, of all those nice bowls that you have stuffed in the backs of your cupboards, and you pull them out. That's one of those little touches that, you know, the mothers will appreciate on Mother's Day.
The roast and veggies are placed nicely inside the fancy dish. And then another one of his secrets, Chris says, costs 99 cents, a bunch of parsley.
Dress it up a little bit and make it look like somebody's actually knows what they're doing. And if if you're a man that doesn't cook and your wife is not used to you cooking, this is going to surprise the hell out of her.
In 2 decades of cooking, Chris has figured out all sorts of shortcuts in the kitchen, like this one.
You're okay with using bags?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh, you mix it right in here.
Yep.
And after a minute of tossing, the salad goes, where else, in another fancy bowl to impress his wife. Chris wanted to share his famous coleslaw recipe with us.
I buy some and I put it in a really nice bowl and pretend I made it.
And there's more.
Extra side dish, a little bit of applesauce.
All in all, a pretty impressive meal that wasn't too difficult to make.
So you made this nice Mother's Day meal, but can I ask you a question?
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to do the dishes too?
Absolutely.
Wow.
I do all the dishes, so.
Now, Chris says dessert on Mother's Day has to be special, so it's chocolate-covered strawberries. He found the ready-made chocolate sauce right next to the strawberries at the grocery store.
And we put it on our plate. That's it. Quick dessert.
And this tantalizing dessert, a chocolate wafer log, apparently very easy to make.
A little bit of whipped cream. We make a sandwich. And then we make a stack of sandwiches. That's basically all it is. Sit it down, covered in whipped cream. I added a couple chocolate-covered strawberries.
And finally, the feast is served.
Okay, you want that piece, Nancy? Sure.
Wife Nancy is
That's
served
a
first.
lady-sized portion.
Daughter Heather is eager to dig in.
Heather?
Accidents do happen, says Chris. This isn't the first time he's dropped something. Heather's boyfriend, Brian, seems to like it, and he's even learning something.
How to keep the wife happy, I guess, by giving her food.
Yeah, that's important.
That's important, yeah.
Heather thinks it's great that her father is sharing his cooking know-how.
It's something that he really enjoys, and I mean, if he has the time to do it, he'll just be experimenting, you know, changing up his recipes, everything like that.
And Nancy says she never takes for granted how lucky she is.
It's wonderful. Every day when I leave work, everybody says, so what's Chris making for dinner tonight?
And now, what they've all been waiting for, the decadent desserts.
Which part's yours?
Something else Chris has learned after many years in the kitchen, he says women love men who can cook.
If they get a man who can cook, I really think they've got a catch. Because if you've got a guy that likes to cook, you certainly don't have to, you know, and that's a great trade-off.
But is Chris going to get himself in trouble by trying to get reluctant men into the kitchen?
You know, I know there are some men who got this cookbook as gifts that probably didn't want it. A young woman at my wife's work is getting married and has bought one to give her husband on their wedding night after she's married. It's, here's surprise, I'm not cooking.
Now, Chris is also a wildlife photographer. He is soon releasing a book on the turkey vultures of Mount Nemo. Still ahead, babies that won't sleep and toddlers that won't eat. This parenting writer debunks some current methods and offers some no-worry solutions. That's coming up on Provincewide.